Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Funky Marketing Show. Another episode, another time to talk about some important things. And there's one topic that we keep neglecting, and it's what it takes for marketers to rise up and gain credibility. So today we are talking about that. I will have a guest, but first let's hear the famous funky intro. Hey guys, time to jump right into the topic. But before that, I want to introduce today's guest, Stacey. Welcome to the show. I think we cannot hear you for some reason.
Okay, yes, hi.
Now it's good. Now it's good. Yeah.
Good to be here.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time. And before you say anything about yourself, I think I owe you like a public apology because I've been part of the community, but I didn't ever engage, and somehow I'm always lacking time to get into that. But just
No worries.
a public apology for that.
Yes, well, I mean, I think it's a standard sort of thing that we see. Marketers are busy, right? That's it. That's the number one complaint I hear. I'm so busy, so much to do.
Yeah, but somehow when you build a community on LinkedIn or something like that, and you are reaching so many people, then it's do I have time to go into the smaller communities, those kind of things. You kind of
Right.
start measuring both, but I think we need to be in those communities. Just it's me that needs more organization, so I find the time for that.
Yes, yeah, and it's interesting. So I started SOAR Marketing Society. That's the community for B2B marketers, really as a private community off of LinkedIn. I find that I worked for 14 years in corporate marketing, and a lot of I would have been hesitant to share sort of anything publicly when I was working in a corporate job, and so I think it's important to have, private communities off of these platforms like LinkedIn, which is great, for reading and consuming. But I think it's difficult for some people to engage, and they don't feel comfortable asking questions in that big public forum. So, that's why I'm excited to build that and to have a place to really send B2B marketers who are wanting to up-level their skills and elevate their leadership and gain more credibility, and things that we don't necessarily talk about. A lot of the content on LinkedIn I find is very much around how to on tactics, not so much about sort of that leadership and strategy side of it. So that's our mission there.
Yeah, I very much agree with that, and I'm trying to do some things differently. But then like I see most of people going into if you're going in depth on some stuff, and they are not for the majority of people, then you won't get that much traction. So people follow that, and then I'm just gonna keep my post in the shallows, what resonates with most of people, and just gonna go with that.
It's true. Yeah. It's hard to kind of change, rotate the ship, so to speak.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself, about your career, what you're doing, and those kind of things.
Yes. So as I mentioned, I started my career in B2C marketing. Actually, I spent 14 years working in corporate. I worked for 5 different Fortune 500 companies based in the US. And then I decided one day that I was ready to start my own thing. So I became a marketing consultant. I've written a couple of marketing books. I'm, as my kids say, I'm a marketing nerd. I love all things marketing. And so I tend to study marketing, read marketing. And now I'm coaching folks on marketing and helping them build their careers in marketing and get really to earn a seat at the table. and for marketing to be seen as a strategic function of the business, not just an order taking function, which a lot of organizations, especially the fast growing ones, tend to find themselves in. So I spend a lot of time talking to marketers about that, concern, that they want to be more strategic. They want to be invited to these strategic conversations, but they're viewed really as taskmasters, right? And order
Yeah.
takers from the executive team, from the sales team, from the product team, and how to start changing perceptions internally so that they can do the strategic work that they thought they were hired to do.
Yeah, exactly. I can totally feel you now that I'm a fractional CMO in a couple of companies doing the same. So I can see how the marketing was observed before, and
Mm-hmm.
the things we are changing right now. And just this morning, I was explaining to Alexander, the guy that works with me. Like he asked me why are like so many of those things are like no brainer and logical. So why so many people don't have it done the way that should be inside the companies. And the answer is so complex because some of them never learn how to do it differently. Some of them have specific goals that they are going after, so they look outside of them. There's a lots of stuff that's going on over there, but it's a conversation that we needs to have persistently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of times too that scaling companies, they tend to hire salespeople or business development people first, and then they get to the point where they need a marketer. But generally, they hire somebody that's more junior to the sales organization, and so naturally, that person comes in with you know immediately, here's a whole list of tasks that we need you to do.
Yeah.
And they never are really given a chance to build a strategy because they already have a long list of activities that the sales team needs, or the product team, or the executives are saying, oh, we're so glad you're here, here's a whole entire list of stuff to do.
Yeah, I just saw the very same example. It's actually scary how similar it is, and it's the CEO who didn't have time to go through all of the leads and have meetings with all of them. So he's hiring interns
Mm,
every 6 months. The new one that is going
yeah.
through the leads, and deciding. Intern is deciding which are good, which are bad to go to the call with the CEO.
Wow.
And when marketing team asks, like what's happening, are the leads good or no, are we doing the good job sending them over, he says, look, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find time to give you the answer because I'm here 2 more weeks. Like,
Right. And also, I've never been trained.
of course, I mean, he
Yeah.
just came into the company and they told him how to do the outreach. That's it,
Right.
basically.
Wow. So much room for improvement.
Exactly, exactly. So let's dive into the thing. So you
Yeah.
mentioned that there are 5 key competencies today's marketer needs to master to stand out. Based on
Yep.
the research and stand out marketing. Of course,
Mhm.
where else should be the source?
Yes, yep, exactly. Yeah, so I co-wrote a book with two other folks who are marketing professors out in the UK, and it came out basically right before the pandemic. So it was
Hmm.
really perfect timing in terms of everything that we had observed. We had done research that a lot of companies take any industry and they were kind of copying and pasting each other, and we called it the sea of sameness. And everybody had the same value proposition and the same YS story, and even the same color palette and look and feel, and even website layout, and using a lot of jargon, using a lot of we statements, not so much about the customer. And so we started digging into it, and there is this topic has kind of been floating around, how to differentiate yourself, and a lot of it falls to, well, you need to be doing positioning, and you need to find your unique differentiators, and what we were really interested in is maybe there's actually a skills gap and a
Hmm.
competency gap happening within the marketing and sales and product organization, that if everybody's comfortable copying and pasting, something's wrong. Something is fundamentally wrong at a cultural level, and maybe even a functional level. And so that's what we were interested in. We dug into that, and we did a ton of interviews with business leaders across the US and the UK primarily, and marketing leaders and sales leaders, and kind of dove into this topic. And what we found was there were really 5 kind of key competencies that were lacking. I mean, we observe this in companies that are successful. The marketing team and the sales team have these competencies. And if you kind of take it a step further, the companies that are, doing a lot of this copy pasting and copycat marketing are lacking these 5 competencies. And so, just quickly, I'll kind of tell you what they are, and then we can dive a
Mm-hmm.
little bit deeper. But the first one was visionary. And this is the ability to kind of look forward and see things ahead. And it means having a pulse on what's happening in your industry, what's happening in your customer's industry, having a pulse on the market, and just knowing, what industry you're operating in. So being able to, look ahead and then make sense of that. Okay, how might this relate to our industry? Now, COVID was a perfect example of this. Nobody could really foresee the global pandemic coming, but there were companies that were very quick to react, right? Almost like within a couple of days. And then you saw other companies kind of jumping on that bandwagon, and some companies just, delaying and delaying and delaying. Like, is this real? Is this really going to happen? Should we say something? Should we not say something? So I think that's kind of a perfect example of visionary right there, is that you
Do,
had
do
people
you
that
do you
did have
think
their pulse.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Do you think the route is? I mean, I love the perspective from which you are getting into the B2B from B2C, exactly the one I had, because I entered the B2B market as well, like a little bit before the pandemic, as well, coming from the B2C. And do you think the visionary part has something to do with the way we are choosing who's going to be the next CEO after the founder? I think it has a lot to do with it because nobody owns the vision, as Simon Sinek
Mm-hmm.
once said. Nobody owns the vision, and usually it's COO or CFO that inherit the CEO position, right? But they
Right.
are the ones that are making sure that everything functions inside the organization, not looking outside and the wider picture.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's that's a really good point. And just, I think it's an element of strategy, right? Who owns
Hmm.
strategy in the organization? And I've worked for really big companies where there was a strategy department, even,
Nice.
and that you had people kind of leading strategy. But in smaller organizations where you don't have that, it's either a gap or it's in the founder's head. I find that a lot, that it's okay, well, it's we have a vision, but it's just nobody's ever put it down on paper, nobody's ever socialized it with the rest of the company.
Exactly.
And so, it's hard for people to kind of jump on board with that until somebody takes the initiative. And I guess you can go say, well, whose job is that? It's the CEO's job, yes, to make sure everybody knows that. But I think HR has a role in socializing this internally to employees, and then marketing, of course, to help evangelize that with customers and partners and even employees. So it's kind of like a joint, task force, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, and I see, related to that, I see the rise of the internal marketing and the importance of it, especially in B2B when you have lots of employees that can really take the company to the next level.
Hmm. Yes. Yes. So
So,
the second
uh-huh.
competency was activator. And this one is really, marketers are traditionally pretty good at this one. And this is the ability not just to execute and get things done, but to get buy-in so that we're working on the right things and activating all the people. I mean, if you think of any marketing project, you've got to bring in a lot of people to make that happen. And so this is the ability to collaborate and to hear other sides of the story and to kind of negotiate ideas so that you can ultimately get a plan together and get the right people on board to execute the idea. So activator was the second one. The third was learner. And this is interesting because, everybody on one hand will say, I need to be learning. I understand the importance of continuous learning, especially in marketing where things are changing, every single day. There's new technologies and new platforms and new customer sentiments and new ways of buying and new ways of selling. And a marketer really needs to kind of always be learning. But on the other hand, this is a huge gap for a lot of marketers because they don't have time. And they'll say, the number one barrier is I want to be doing this, but I don't have time. And in fact, we asked the question to a lot of the leaders we spoke to, and we said, do you have a formalized learning plan or process? And they said, well, we have a budget, but I can count on one hand how many times people have come and asked to use that budget toward a learning initiative. And that's alarming because companies are willing to invest. And I think we're seeing with the great resignation and the reskilling that needs to happen. And now there's this employee retention problem. But meanwhile, there's a lot of marketers haven't necessarily taken that to heart and really realizing that they own their own leadership and their own development. And so, my advice to marketers on this one is take advantage of it and map out kind of what is the next bullet point you want to be able to add to your resume, and what do you need to learn to get there, and go find a class. Or we're building a marketing strategy coaching program right now to help people, and we have a value proposition course that kind of helps people on some of these fundamentals that are really lacking in marketing. But I would say that was, that's the third one is learner. The fourth was usefulness. Usefulness is the ability to connect the dots. So if you think of marketing's job as being really the bridge between what a company sells and what a customer wants, and how does marketing build the bridge between those two? And this has to do with, you have to understand both sides of that equation, and then really develop content that customers want, right? And understand how they buy. So that you're doing something that's meaningful. And like one example I think that we hear in B2B is just a super tactical example is on your website, are you sharing your pricing? Are you sharing your price ranges? And this is something that every customer says that they want, and yet most companies are not transparent about because
Yeah.
it's too complex, or there's too many variables, or we can't share this. And so, you can certainly put a range on there, and it weeds out actually a lot of people that would never be able to even afford your services, and hopefully directs, the right type of customers to you. And the other trend that I think is happening right now is around usefulness is, I can't remember the exact number, but it was a high percentage of people that would prefer a sales rep free buying experience. They don't want to interact with the sales rep at all.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, and some companies are kind of fighting that, right? Well, too bad, this is how we sell, and this is how you have to go through the process. Other companies, and the ones that figured this out, are certainly more in tune with their customers, and will likely win in their space. How do we use marketing and digital content and videos and other things to educate buyers, because that's how they want to learn and that's how they want to buy, versus forcing them, to sit through a demo and talk to a salesperson.
Yeah, and even giving them a chance to try out the product. That's
Mm-hmm.
also because, like, lots of times when I was trying to buy something, I wanted to get a quick win to look at it, and like, if I got the access this day, I would solve my problem today and I would buy the tool. But
Mm-hmm.
instead I needed to go to schedule a call to find the time. If you take a week or
Right.
two, and then I would just go with the ones that it's most convenient.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for tech tools, I mean, that's an easier sell, right? If it's, the free version, or just a little 7-day trial. On the professional services side, what I've seen work there is doing some type of audit, right? Or something like, it's kind of that try before you buy concept. Hey, do we think alike? Are we philosophically aligned? Let's do this audit together, and you can kind of see what the roadmap is that I have for your business and the plan, and then you can decide if you like that and want to proceed, or take that advice that I just gave you, and then throw it away if you want. But at least that's kind of the same concept, the try before you buy, in maybe a more complex or professional type selling environment.
Exactly, but that's actually the point of the topic that we said. It's the main one: how to actually create the credibility, so people come to us trusting us and ready to buy already.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And then the final competency is evaluator. And this is really, you see all this data-driven marketing and data, big data, everything's all about data. But this is really the ability to understand and interpret data and to evaluate, do our programs work? Yes or no? What things are changing? What changes do we need to make in a business as a result? And this one's interesting because it requires somebody to not only be able to understand and interpret the data, but also have some political savviness to be able to navigate, right, and explain this back to the organization. Because a lot of times people that are in these data roles, they're presenting an objective view back, but maybe it's a pet project of the CEO or the CFO, or somebody had this great idea and they wanted to try this thing, and it's about kind of navigating how to share the results of that in a way that's respectful of the idea, and not kind of shooting yourself in the foot with, well, that idea sucked and let's move on. And so anyways, all five of those together make the acronym VALUE. And we loved that acronym because our first book was called Valuology. It's all about how to create value propositions that are customer oriented. And this is, fundamentally what we believe the role of marketing and sales is, which is to communicate and deliver customer value. And so this is kind of telling you how to do that. I mean, if you believe in that philosophy that, yes, my job as a marketer is to deliver and communicate customer value, these are the 5 competencies really that you need to be successful.
Yeah, I think customer value is, should be the North Star for us, for the company, for everybody. Because I think, in this day and age that we are living, especially in tech, like lots of companies have sort of like similar products, similar features.
Mm-hmm.
They have this engineers that can work in each one of those companies, the same job. And, to be able to differentiate themselves, it's the way we enable customers, to go to their journey towards buying the product, and then the customer experience becomes the most important thing. And with that, the value, the purpose, and everything else gets, gets the more bigger importance than it ever had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I was, just this morning working on a strategic narrative for a company that works in recruiting, so partnership with hiring, senior roles, those kind of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the thing everybody is looking after for a company. It's not like the salary range, nothing else. They just want the purpose. They want company that, that has the story, that has the vision, that know what it's doing, and that's all that they want from the company. Because they will get the
Yep.
same salary everywhere. The job is basically the same, but what we
Yep.
feel is different.
Yeah, exactly. Culture is a big piece of that, right? And how to explain that and communicate it. Career progression, right? It's like give people what they want. And I think going back to kind of one of the competencies, learner, instilling really a learning environment, and people, want that. They want to get better, and we're not meant to be stagnant humans. We're meant to keep evolving and growing. And just because we stop school at a certain age, does not mean that we stop learning. And so I think a lot of companies can take that to heart, right, and figure out how to build a little bit more formalized program around that.
Yeah, and we talk about external things, but how can we implement all those things inside the company? For example, that we mentioned that usually company try to grow with hiring more salespeople from the start.
Mm-hmm.
They don't, see marketing as building the foundation, and then sales should take it to the next level, but it's reverse.
Yeah.
So how can we turn things around and get more credibility to marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. And it's interesting. There was a stat that I saw that somebody published, that did some research on Fortune 100 CEOs, that only 13% of them had some type of background in marketing. Most of them came from a finance or engineering background. And I think, if you were to look at tech companies, it's probably skewed very high on sort of the engineering tech side and
Yes.
not really on the marketing and sales side. And so that is fundamentally where we're starting from. That's our starting point. And I experienced this firsthand working for several individuals who were non-marketers. They tried to apply formula to marketing, and this is a one big difference I saw between B2C and B2B was that B2C marketing, we had a really big budget. We did not have to fight to secure the budget, and there was a respect for the marketing team and the marketing department as to the value that they were bringing. And what I discovered when I went over to B2B is that did not exist. The respect in that organization and most B2B organization goes to the sales team. And the reason is because the sales team can be formulaic. The CEO and the CFO and everybody else understands sort of that formula, which is I hire X salespeople, I give them Y quota, and even if they make 50% of that, here's the revenue I can expect to get. And they want to apply that same type of formula to marketing, but it just doesn't work. Because as we know, there is no really one size fits all in marketing. And then marketers also ruin everything, which is a really great idea becomes copied, and then all of a sudden it loses its effectiveness. And so marketers are constantly having to sort of reinvent that process. But the good news is, most CEOs believe that marketers have more power and influence, but they just don't trust them and they don't have the confidence in them. And one of the primary reasons is that marketing has invented basically their own jargon. So instead of speaking business like the rest of the company, talking about revenue and sales projections and profitability and EBITDA and expenses, marketing comes in and starts talking about, all the acronyms, SEO and PPC and name it, value propositions and brand essence and brand promise and positioning matrix and ABM. And it's just like nobody really cares about that from an executive standpoint. So there's this big disconnect. So I mean, the first thing I would say, there's really kind of three things I would say that marketers could be doing to help improve their credibility. And the first one is to know what the role of marketing is in their organization. And how is marketing really perceived in the organization? Because that's the real fight that you're kind of up against. Is you could come in and it could be written in a job description that it's highly strategic and you get access, and then you come into the organization and it's very different. And so I would start there with even doing interviews internally with my sales team, my product team, my CEO and CFO. What do you think the role of marketing is in the company? And what do you view success to look like in the company? Because I think that's a really good sort of start. And then you can start to kind of position yourself of, what really should marketing be doing, and educating people internally on the breadth of the role of marketing. And this is one of the questions we actually asked in Standout Marketing. There's a chapter that, because we were interested in this topic, what is the role of marketing versus what is the role of sales? And some of the fundamental things that people kept saying for marketing is that they own the brand, they own organizational alignment on what customers value. We expect them to know what the customers want. They own the marketing strategy, sales enablement, and then demand generation. So those are kind of the big buckets. And it's, a lot of companies hire people and then it's like, well, marketing equals the party planning department, right? Or marketing is the gift giving department, or marketing develops sales collateral, or marketing produces leads. But it's so much more than that. And if nobody's kind of doing these other elements of marketing with like the brand and customer research and marketing strategy, then the question is, well, who is? Nobody. And that's why
Usually
marketing's not
nobody.
invited.
Yeah, usually it's nobody. And one more thing that I'm seeing is marketing is just creating materials for sales and for every, like, promotional materials. And
Exactly.
to be honest, I think a lot comes down to the marketers themselves, because lots of marketers like to keep it safe in that position. Okay, I'm gonna do webinars, I'm gonna create social media posts, those kind of stuff, but as long as I'm not involved in on the sitting on the table and not involved in all revenue conversations, like I'm safe.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually, but I think
The
it's changing.
perception.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's changing and changing a lot, and I think like marketers now really push and wants to be involved in the revenue conversations. and,
Mm-hmm.
and you mentioned one thing, and I recommend that to everybody, to ask what do you think it's my job,
Mm-hmm.
before you even start, because I've seen lots of situation and lots of different answers even in the same company,
Yes.
and to
Yeah,
align that takes time.
exactly. Yeah, and I think there's definitely a window. I mean, if you're starting a new job, the window is like day one, right? Start aligning and making it that job that you want it to be. If you're already in a job, then it's, I always recommend kind of at least annually or a couple times a year, you're sitting down with these functions and doing like a pulse check. Okay, how do you think our function's doing? What should we be doing better? What are some things that you recommend? Because everybody has, I mean, this is just the reality. Everybody has an opinion about marketing. Everybody thinks they're a marketer. And so give people the opportunity to share their feedback. It doesn't mean you have to take it. It doesn't mean you have to implement it, but just give them the opportunity to share their input. And all of a sudden they just want to be heard. And so it's like, okay, well, I considered your thing and that idea that you had, and we're not moving forward with it. And here's why. And so you start to develop this more kind of respectful collaboration than just that, order taking expectation. The
Yeah.
the other thing I think that marketers could be doing is, and this is a really big one. This is like at the heart of sort of my passion, which is knowing your customer. And I'm shocked. I mean, this is again B2C versus B2B. In B2C, we wouldn't have thought ever about launching any campaign or any new product without doing extensive customer research. I mean, that was just a big part of our budget. We did focus groups all the time. We had a whole entire research agency. We bought third party research. I mean, we were always looking at sort of what the sentiments of the customers were. Not to mention all the internal data that we got back from any campaigns that we would run. And so we were just kind of always in that customer mindset. Then I went over to B2B and I realized, oh, the way that marketers are learning about their customers primarily is through the sales team.
Yeah.
So they go to sales and they say, well, what do you think the customers want? And sales, keep in mind, while I love sales, the role of sales and marketing is different. Sales is short term. They're going to tell you what they need right now to close a deal this month. They're not going to tell you what the customer wants a year from now, right? Or looking ahead, because they're short term and marketing is supposed to be long term. So you have these series of you have a distorted view, I would say, of what customers want if you're only going through the sales organization, because it's just like this sort of kind of myopic view of what customers want. So, number one thing that marketers could be doing is budgeting for customer research and talking to their own customers. Now, I know that there's a lot of feedback and input and advice on LinkedIn. Like every marketer should go out to talk to customers, and I don't necessarily advocate for that, because there is a skill set required to interview customers and to talk to customers and to get insights from customers. So if you're not experienced in that, I don't certainly recommend ever picking up the phone and just trying to have a casual conversation with a customer. Secondly, I think this is where the sales people come in. And while it's important to have that relationship with the sales team, because sales often in B2B organizations holds the key to the customer relationship. And if marketers want to talk directly to customers, they generally have to go through the sales team, right? Because the sales team owns that relationship. They're going to probably set up the meeting. And a lot of salespeople will say, don't have respect for the marketing person, and they're actually fearful on putting the marketer in front of the salesperson. In front of the customer, because they're like, I don't want that marketer to mess up a deal. We may
Hmm.
have a deal in the works or a potential deal that I'm going to sell them in the future. And I'm really fearful that marketing is going to say something or open their mouth or ask a question that's going to be inappropriate, and then it's going to ruin all my chances. And so, so one thing I recommend for marketers is get with your sales team and learn the sales process. ask your sales team to recommend one sales book. What's their favorite sales book? And read that book so that you can understand the sales process. Because when you get respect from the sales team, then all of a sudden that door opens to customers. And I myself, when I went over to B2B, would always attend sales training. So we had sales methodology training and all the sellers went through it. And I always asked to attend. And I was the only marketer. And it was,
Yeah.
we would hire trainers and the trainers would even say, I can't remember the last time a marketer has come through sales training. And so that just kind of goes to show this disconnect from marketing and sales is really a little bit more in your control than you think. And so learning about the sales process, asking the sellers kind of what their struggles are, and just, treating them really like a customer segment. Like, okay, I want to understand how you're doing your job and how to be better. Opens the doors to then being able to have customer conversations.
Yeah, I agree. And if you add customer success to the whole conversation, it's totally another door, because they have all the insights that both marketing and sales can use further.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that not many, and that's not a point many people make, that not everybody should do the interviews with the customers. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but today we even don't need to, all dependent, like it's good if we can, but sometimes it's, we can listen to the sales calls, not be on the call. Sometimes we can find out if those people were a guest on the podcast. Lots of people are sharing lots of stuff, and there are just literally podcasts for every niche and every industry. So we can go in,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's not that exact person, but there's somebody very similar to them, so we can learn from that. Like there are so many sources from which we can learn
Yes.
and take
Yep.
things to
Exactly.
learn. So like being shy from getting on the calls, it's not an excuse anymore, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I think. Yes, there's certainly ways to learn it, and then yeah, getting social media. I mean, of course, is a door wide open to. There's really no excuse to learn. Um,
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned regarding B2C and B2B, having a budget for customer research and those kind of stuff. Like
mhm.
in B2B, we even know the name of the person that we are targeting, and
Right.
the name of the whole committee and everybody. So in that way, it's more obvious what we should do, whom we need to get to know, and all those stuff. In B2C, it's one to many usually,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
and it complicates things, but you have a budget for research and going to that step. Here it means like usually there's a company, and I still think B2B companies are not there yet to like these are the people, these are ICPs, but these are the ones that are affecting the decision maker from the top. These are the ones that are affecting the decision maker from the bottom. We need to have all of them, and it's not a building a company. Those are people on specific positions inside the company.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a really a good point, and something I always talk about when we talk about value propositions is, the B2B value proposition really has to hit two main messages. It has to speak to what's in it for the individual and what's in it for the company. And so a lot of B2B value propositions only speak to the company side. And that's why they feel kind of empty. And there's no feeling or emotion to it, because it's like, well, we help you grow revenue. Everybody says that. Everybody across every business says that you help me grow revenue. But talk to me about, you help me get along with my coworkers, or you help me create more efficiency with my team, right? Or you help me get promoted. Now you're speaking to my specific job in my specific department. And oh, by the way, you also help me grow revenue. Great. That sounds like more of a match than just, oh, we help you grow revenue, which I feel disconnected from, because, that message I think really resonates with a founder, right? Or a CEO or an entrepreneur or a small business owner. But when you start getting into larger organizations, all these different departments, people are a little bit more disconnected from that as a central sort of driving force. They're not waking up in the middle of the night thinking about growing revenue when you're, working in an IT function and you have some major implementation project. They're thinking about the major implementation project and if it's going to succeed or fail. And so I think we need to put ourselves back in the shoes of the customer and think about it from that standpoint. And what are they trying to achieve, and what are they motivated by, even just in their career?
Yeah, one way or another, we end up with getting to know the customers better.
Yeah.
That's so true. So tell me, what is one thing, one message that that you want people to take away from this conversation, and where can they find more information about
Yeah.
you or your projects? I'll make sure that we add the links to the description.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. Stacey Danheiser is my name. We also have a community, as I mentioned, for B2B marketers to help gain credibility and kind of elevate their impact. And that's SOAR Marketing Society. It's soarmarketing.club is the website URL. I would say that the number one takeaway from my standpoint is I believe fundamentally that marketing is a strategic function of the business. I do not believe that marketing is just a tactical execution function. And I want marketers to know that strategy is possible, and that they can earn a seat at the table and keep that seat at the table by understanding kind of that two sides of that equation that we just talked about, the customer and the business, and kind of building the bridge between both of them. And so it's not just about lead generation, or event planning, or one specific tactic, but really about sort of understanding that whole picture.
Yeah, getting to know lots of different stuff. And I think, to kind of get to your point, it's good that you are doing those efforts to kind of educate people, help them out, because at least here in Serbia, like I get information from the companies that there are not that many people who knows how to create the bridge between the customers and the business, and
Mhm.
do that. Usually there are people who kind of understand one specific point. There's strategies for, I don't know, Google AdWords, or they're just doing the customer research, not doing the other stuff that comes after that.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, specific segment, but there aren't that many people that understand the whole wide picture, the processes and everything that comes in between those things.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. The first job that I ever had in marketing was my title was acquisition marketing. So I was responsible for acquiring new customers. It was not a specific tactic. It was you use every tactic to acquire a customer. And then I switched over to retention marketing, and same thing. It was you use every tactic and program and idea and creative that you can think of to retain customers and get them to spend more or buy more. And I think that we have become, the marketing function has become so specialized that you have people that now just have lost sight of the big picture. And they're, SEO is what I do, and that's all I can think about. But, I always go back to the question, why are you even doing SEO? Do you know what the purpose of this is and how it connects to the business, and what, and customers? Because if not, then it's like you're always going to be an SEO specialist, and that might be fine, and maybe that's what you want. But I think there's an imbalance right now in marketing of just only specialists, and we're missing sort of that generalist, strategist, executive view. So
Yeah, totally agree. I see that people agree with you as well. Like Aneshka agrees with lots of stuff. She said, "Great discussion. It's great to hear those approaches start to dominate the B2B compared to times when B2B was about awards, partnerships, and client wins.
mhm.
Me as a opposite to customer oriented." And Jake also said spot on regarding marketing and sales and short long term comparison. So, Stacy, thanks a lot for being on the show.
Yes,
Sorry for me being late at the
yeah,
start
no
one
worries.
more
Thanks for
time.
having me.
It was a great discussion, and I think we're gonna have to do this again soon and get more into seeing how the whole industry is developing and what are some new things that we are seeing.
Yes, would love to. Yeah, we'll do one on marketing strategy. We'll dive into the specifics of how to create one.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thanks
Okay.
for being on the show one more time, guys. One more last thing for you. Go back to the beginning of the episode. Check out all the specific things that Stacy was talking about, all the 5 components and everything else about alignment between marketing and sales and customer value and all those stuff. And keep it funky as always.